Welcome to Motion 24. Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler had their story ready. On the surface, it sounded flawless, almost boring in its simplicity. The missing cash from the farm? They insisted it was never missing at all. According to them, every dollar had been quietly spent on undocumented farm expenses: fertilizer, diesel fuel, day labor, emergency repairs, paid in cash, under the table, just to keep the pumpkin patch alive during peak season. No receipts, no records, no trail. It was the oldest excuse in the book, and they believed it was untouchable. After all, cash doesn't leave a paper trail. Or so they thought. What they didn't account for was one critical, fatal mistake. They didn't burn the money. They didn't hide it. They didn't bury it. They deposited it. In the 21st century, the moment money enters the banking system, it becomes traceable. Every dollar creates a digital echo, a ghost in the machine that never truly disappears. For 6 long, agonizing months, while the district attorney struggled to assemble enough evidence to move forward, something else was happening quietly in the background. Marek was working. Funding a secret independent investigation out of his own pocket, Chris leaned on his real estate expertise, his methodical mindset, and an almost obsessive attention to detail. He assembled a small team trained in forensic financial tracking, using the same advanced technology federal agencies relying on to follow cartel money across borders. This wasn't about rumors. This wasn't about revenge. This was about one thing only: follow the money. And what they uncovered wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a digital breadcrumb trail. A trail that began in a pumpkin patch in Oregon, crossed state lines, passed through multiple financial channels, and led straight into a hidden financial stronghold. One account, one name: Caryn Chandler. The forensic report that emerged didn't just weaken the defense, it shattered it. It exposed contradictions, dismantled carefully rehearsed explanations, and flipped the entire investigation on its head. This is the story of how the money was traced, how the lies unraveled, and how one overlooked digital footprint changed everything. But before we open the files on this financial manhunt and reveal the evidence that altered the course of the case, I need you to do something. If you want justice for Amy, and you believe the truth deserves to come into the light, hit that like button right now. It helps this story push past the algorithm and reach the people who need to see it. Trust me, Matt and Caryn do not want this story heard. And if you're new here, welcome to the front lines of the investigation. Subscribe to Motion 24 and turn on notifications, because the details we're about to reveal come from deep inside the investigation, and you won't hear this level of insight anywhere else. Join the team. Let's follow the truth. To understand the magnitude of what Marek pulled off, we first have to understand the wall he was up against. We call it the cash defense. When the news first broke that over $200,000 was missing from the pumpkin patch accounts, a story we covered in our previous deep dive, Matt Roloff's legal team didn't panic. They didn't scramble. They simply pivoted. Their argument was elegant in its simplicity and frustratingly difficult to disprove. They admitted the money was withdrawn. They admitted the cash was gone. But they vehemently denied it was stolen. According to exclusive insider theories and reports from the pretrial hearings, Matt's defense team argued that running a farm of that magnitude requires liquidity. They claimed that the $200,000 was a slush fund used for legitimate business operations that simply didn't have receipts. They depicted a tumultuous harvest season in which vendors wanted immediate payment, machinery required emergency repairs, and temporary workers were paid on the spot. As the idealistic but disorganized businessman, they said, Matt merely misplaced the paperwork. It is not a crime to be disorganized or to be lousy at keeping financial records. Their defense rested on that. What this argument did was raise what the legal community refers to as reasonable doubt. The prosecution has the whole burden of proof in a legal proceeding. Both the theft of the funds and their subsequent use for private gain were elements that the district attorney had to establish. The case hit a roadblock when it became clear that the money did not go into the farm, but rather into the pockets of Matt or Caryn. Cash does not reveal its owner's identity. It loses its identity the moment it leaves the bank in the duffel bag, as eyewitnesses claim to have seen. It would become a he said, she said situation if Matt claimed to have paid a contractor $20,000 in cash for fencing, but the contractor was unavailable. Nobody could move the prosecution. Despite having the drive and the chance, they were still unsure of where they were going. The jury was unable to see how the funds were spent. This was the gloom that Amy Roloff was facing. According to family members and friends, Amy was petrified. Without a doubt, she sensed that the funds had not been utilized on the property. There was no way that amount of money could disappear into fertilizer and diesel, as she was the one who knew the farm's inner workings better than anyone. Still, there's a huge difference between knowing it and demonstrating it. Be cautious, the district attorney said, because a plea agreement could be in order if they couldn't discover a concrete connection. The story was being twisted to make it seem like a simple family feud about inaccurate bookkeeping and not a criminal plot. It didn't convince Marek, though. After a lifetime of handling escrow, titles, and complicated financial transactions, Chris understood that Matt and Caryn don't save large sums of money merely for show. He was aware that the funds would have to re-enter the system at some point. No amount of cash in a suitcase will cover a mortgage. You probably won't have much luck buying stocks with a mattress full of bills. Everyone who knew Chris well attests that he was visibly frustrated. As they twirled around the truth, he saw the attorneys use tangible money to hide their identities. He made up his mind that he would personally track down every single dollar if the district attorney lacked the means or the time to accomplish so. Matt and Caryn's haughtiness was obvious to Chris. They thought they were more intelligent than the rest of the group. They reasoned that they had cut ties because they had physically taken the funds out of the farm's accounts. Their avarice was Chris's bet. He assumed they were saving for a rainy day fund, a golden parachute for their Arizona life, and wasn't betting that they would simply spend it on meals and trips. Also, they'd have to deposit that sum of money back into a bank for that to happen. At this point in the story, the inquiry becomes pivotal. Marek became a funder of truth rather than a simple detective. In our last report, we mentioned that Chris had sold off a lot of his own assets. Speculation at the time was that he was trying to pay for legal fees or a new house. However, recent reports indicate that he actually hired a Seattle-based boutique forensic accounting firm with ex-IRS special agents and bank fraud specialists on staff. It wasn't your average audit. An operation to trace transactions was underway. Chris gave them all the information he had, including the dates and quantities of when the farm's cash went missing, as well as, most importantly, the known travel schedules of Matt and Caryn. He paid them to put together the puzzle and gave them the components. The company made use of proprietary software, which is typically associated with advanced data mining technologies, utilized in anti-terrorism efforts or in the investigation of money laundering syndicates. This program checks millions of data points, not simply bank statements. To do this, it examines public spending information, ATM locations, deposit timestamps, flight logs, and cellular tower pings. The investigators' working hypothesis was a financial phenomenon called structuring, or more commonly, smurfing. In the U.S., a currency transaction report, CTR, is required by the Bank Secrecy Act to be submitted to the federal government for all cash deposits exceeding $10,000. Despite claims to the contrary, Matt and Caryn are not naive. It would be obvious to them. They would be well aware that the Internal Revenue Service would be knocking on their door in less than a day if they walked into a bank and deposited $200,000 in cash. Theoretically, they would dissect the cash. Never wanting to trigger the censors, they would make seemingly arbitrary transfers of modest amounts. $3,000 here, $5,000 there, but always keeping them beneath the reporting limit. After entering the specifications, the forensic team's system began to work. They possessed an exceptionally strong magnet, yet all they could find was a needle in a haystack. They programmed the system to track down any bank accounts associated with Caryn or Matt and look for deposits between $2,000 and $9,000. They superimposed a 3-year time frame on top of this data. The system returned just background noise for the initial several weeks. Apparently, the cache defense worked. Perhaps it had actually been wasted. It is possible that they had it locked away in an Arizona safe. There was supposedly unprecedented tension in the Roloff Marek home. It appeared like Chris' riches had been wasted on this investigation. Still, Chris was adamant that they keep searching. He gave the order to expand the net to the team. Instead of trying to find accounts associated with Caryn Chandler or Matt Roloff, he instructed them to focus on finding the places. He warned them, "Don't look for the name, look for the body." His intention was to divert their attention from names and onto geography. Everything shifted after that choice. 3 distinct geographic zones, Scottsdale, Arizona, Reno, Nevada, and Portland, Oregon, were used to fine-tune the software. The triangle's 3 corners were these. The base of operations was in Portland. The vacation house and retirement plan was in Scottsdale, but Reno? The anomaly was Reno. Several sightings of Matt and Caryn in Nevada have led to speculation that they are there for conferences or brief vacations. A pattern became apparent once the software completed processing the geographic data. It was barely perceptible, yet present. There was an odd pattern to the money moving about in these 3 places, according to the forensics team. As predictable as clockwork, a frenzy of activity would occur on the first Monday of nearly every month. A $4,000 deposit made at a Hillsborough drive-through ATM got things rolling in Portland. A separate $3,000 was deposited at a separate Beaverton bank 2 hours afterwards. Next, 2 days of complete quiet. Next, the pattern would abruptly change. Identical deposits would show up in either Reno or Scottsdale 48 hours following the Portland deposits, according to the data. A bank in a Scottsdale strip mall would take $5,000, while a casino ATM in Reno would take $2,000 more. Never before had the sums been a uniform round figure like $10,000. Numbers like $4,200, $3,800, and $6,100 were usually strange and specific. These would appear to be ordinary transactions to an untrained eye or a typical bank auditor reviewing a single account. A gambler collecting their winnings, a small business owner depositing their revenues, etc. The forensic team was able to remove any appearance of randomness by synchronizing the timing and superimposing the deposits on a single map. Everything was done in unison. Little by little, over the course of several years, the sum of these deposits started to rise. $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. When the forensics team looked closer, they saw a money laundering masterclass. The criminals were transferring the money physically, shifting it across state lines, perhaps in their suitcases or carry-ons, and then putting it into the banking system in little amounts so no one would notice. Small portions were being given to the beast. However, a huge issue persisted. Although it had located the deposits and their respective locations, the software had failed to identify the account. The data from the ATM indicated that funds were being received, but due to banking privacy restrictions, the team was unable to instantly determine the account owner. Although the initial data encrypted the account holder's name, they could see the bank logo, E*Trade, a well-known brokerage platform. But Chris Marek isn't the kind to quit when he encounters a firewall. They were coming close, he realized. They had figured out the theft's method, he knew. The travel schedule was a fantastic fit for Matt and Caryn. The deposits in Scottsdale would light up if the little people. Big World production schedule indicated that they were traveling to Arizona. The deposits in Reno or Portland would increase every time they went on a weekend getaway. There was no denying the correlation. It couldn't have been a coincidence, according to statistics. The last line of protection against prying eyes had to be broken by the crew. They have to assign a particular person to those ATM deposits. The role that Chris's intuition played regarding Caryn Chandler became apparent at this point. Despite his domineering personality, he had a sneaking suspicion that Matt wouldn't place the funds in his own name. As a prominent figure, Matt's wealth is under constant scrutiny. His marriage has ended in divorce. Before, attorneys sifted over his financial records. Having a hidden account in Matt's name would be too paranoid for him. And Caryn? The reliable manager was Caryn. Caryn was the devoted companion, after all. Most importantly, Caryn was not a complete stranger to life prior to meeting Matt. Chris ordered the forensics team to look into Caryn's past by conducting a skip trace and a name search. He was highly interested in learning all of her aliases, past addresses, and names. He wasn't seeking out Caryn Chandler, rather he sought out her former self. Her maiden name was the most prominent of the several variants retrieved by the search. She still retained the legal right to use a name that she hadn't used for business in decades. The group reran the search, this time limiting their attention to E** trade records associated with Caryn Saunders. The screen turned crimson at that moment. A match was detected by the system. No separate accounts were credited with the $4,000 in Portland, $5,000 in Scottsdale, and the haphazard sums in Reno. A high-yield brokerage account bearing the name C. Saunders and having a PO address was where they were all being directed. Arizona parcel. A hole had been punched in the wall. It seemed like the cash defense was about to fall apart. They had discovered the pipeline, the method, and now the name. But the icing on the cake would be what they discovered within that account. The overall amount, and even more horrifying, the items being bought with the money. It was a portfolio of actively managed investments, not merely a savings account. Moreover, Marek allegedly laughed in surprise at the stocks that Caryn purchased with the stolen farm funds. Quite the paradox, really. We will pause for a moment at this point, because what follows is a detailed accounting of the stocks. A sum that was almost exactly equal to the missing farm finances, and the dramatic moment when Marek brought this proof to the attention of the district attorney. To stay up to date with all the latest developments in this investigation, subscribe now. You must listen to the conclusion of this. The exact businesses in which Caryn invested a whopping nearly $200,000 will astound you. Even Matt Roloff might not have fully understood the degree of cold-blooded corporate planning and calculation at play here. The investigation had progressed from an academic exercise to the point of gathering concrete proof. Chris knew who it was, C. Saunders, how it had happened, arranged ATM deposits across 3 states, and what the missing money was. However, in order for this to be admissible in court, and ensure that no expensive defense attorney could use legalese to evade responsibility, it was necessary to present the complete picture. The funds in the C needed to be proven. The sum that went missing from the pumpkin patch and Saunders' account were mathematically inseparable. All of the forensic accounting firm's money came from just one area. They started to construct a concurrent timeline. Merchandise sales, private tours, and the farm's busiest weekends in October were all marked on the left side of the chart as days that brought in money. They detailed the deposits into the C on the chart's right side, account maintained by Saunders. The accuracy of the correlation was frightening. For instance, the farm set a new attendance record over the weekend of October 14. An amount of approximately $25,000 was taken in. On October 17, 3 days subsequent, the C, a total of $24,500 was deposited into Saunders' account from 4 different Oregon and Nevada ATMs. There was a 3-day holdup that made up the travel time. The missing $500 was probably for food, gas, or spending money. There was an endless cycle of the pattern. A massive farm weekend, Then a smurfing expedition to the ATMs. This wasn't mere skimming, it became apparent. A large portion of the farm's income was taken in this way. Before it even made it into the official records, they were skimming the top. Plus, they fooled themselves into thinking they were undetectable since they were utilizing the C. Saunders identity. Since the account was not associated with Matt's social security number, they believed that neither the divorce attorneys nor the farm's regular accountants would ever be able to learn about it. They were correct, at least until Marek got curious and looked. Over the course of 3 years, the group determined the total deposits. A total of $198,704.50 was the final figure. Less than 1% separated this from Chris' original calculation of the lost monies, which he had estimated at about $200,000. They were a great fit. There was no way to salvage the undocumented farm expenses argument. By some stroke of luck, you wouldn't waste $200,000 on fertilizer and then put the same sum into a hidden stock trading account using your maiden name. That is theft, not a coincidence. However, the most startling revelation was still to follow. A detailed accounting of the C's assets was part of the forensic investigation. Account maintained by Saunders. Expect them to put their money into dull index funds or potentially risky cryptocurrency in the hopes of making twice as much money as they put in. On the other hand, Caryn, or whoever was in charge of the trades, was purchasing individual stocks. The farm really did business with these large agricultural supply firms, and they were buying shares in those companies. However, the second biggest asset in the portfolio was the actual surprise, the fact that caused Chris to shake his head in shock. Caryn Chandler's hidden holding is the second biggest. Discovery Incorporated was in Saunders' portfolio. The network that airs Little People, Big World, TLC, is owned by that corporation. Give that some time to settle in. It would be admirable if the boldness weren't so damning. The forensic investigation found that Caryn and Matt had been siphoning off farm funds meant for paying employees, the crew, or even Amy, who was a shareholder, and instead had been purchasing shares in the media conglomerate that employed them. It was as if they were engaging in double dipping. The group was paying them a salary and then reinvesting the money they made from the farm into the network. The cycle of avarice was self-perpetuating. They had taken money from the family business's top brass and were now gambling on the longevity of their own show. The media stocks were just the beginning of the irony. Companies in the agricultural supply industry, which includes those making commercial fertilizer and heavy-duty farming machinery, made up the other big part of the portfolio. Never forget the cash defense. Do you recall that Matt's attorneys claimed that the illicitly spent $200,000 on diesel and fertilizer went unaccounted for? They were, in a twist of fate, telling half-truths. While the funds were allocated toward fertilizer, they were not specifically spent on the nitrogen bags that were utilized in the pumpkin patch. Companies that make fertilizer incorporated it into their stock. Instead of using the funds for farm maintenance, they invested it for their retirement. The funds weren't going toward anything. They cultivated it. To top it all off, they were using a maiden name that had lain dormant for decades. This proved it all. It established purpose. You wouldn't dare put $200,000 into a hidden brokerage account by mistake. You won't unwittingly skirt federal reporting requirements by manipulating the structure of the deposits. While informing your ex-wife that the farm is just breaking even on cash flow, you most surely do not put that money in a diversified portfolio by accident. This was an intentional long-term plan to steal money from the farm and then cover it up. Now that Marek knew where the money was going, he was confident he had enough. But he was also aware that no matter how exhaustive a private inquiry is, it cannot lead to a conviction in a court of law. The district attorney would not be able to disregard this information unless he presented it in a certain way. This data was raw, and he needed to make a story out of it. He gave the forensic team the green light to put everything together in a report. There was a 300-page document detailing financial disaster. It wasn't merely a spreadsheet. In order to complete the document, the crew labored nonstop for 7 days. They made charts with different colors to show how money was moving. In the siphon, a graphical representation of the pumpkin patch's cash intake for the day was depicted with blue bars, and the red bars represent Saunders' ATM deposits. It was a wonderful fit when you layered the transparencies. The red bars fit snugly into the spaces between the blue ones. The act of stealing was symbolized visually. Screenshots captured by the ATM's security cameras were incorporated. The forensic team was able to match the timestamps of the deposits with publicly available traffic camera data and geolocation tags from social media, even though they couldn't access the live video feed without a warrant due to bank privacy restrictions. An Instagram selfie of Caryn and Matt in Scottsdale, Arizona, with smiles on their faces and cocktails in hand, appeared on one page of the report. Just arrived in sunny AZ. It read in the caption, which was time-stamped at 4:00 p.m. on a Friday. The report's transaction log for the C was located on the very following page. Records indicate that at 5:30 p.m. on the mentioned Friday, Saunders deposited $5,000 in cash at an ATM in Scottsdale. There was no denying the closeness. Without even taking their luggage out of their suitcases, they were depositing the money. Marek bound the report. He chose not to digitalize it. To him, it had to be physical. He hoped that people would feel the gravity of the evidence. He slipped the 300-page binder into his briefcase, its title reading, Forensic Analysis of Cash Outflows, Roloff Farms 2020 to 2023, and its cover is striking black. Press was not summoned by him. The tabloids didn't get even one page because of him. If word got out before the cops got their hands on it, he knew Matt and Caryn might spin the tale or, even worse, close the account and conceal the money overseas. It was a daring move by Marek. Going straight to the Portland District Attorney's office, he got in his car and went there. He was unprepared for his appointment, but he did have the answer to the district attorney's most pressing problem. Receptionists allegedly recognized him as he walked in. Chris may be a familiar face from the show, but he chose not to sign autographs. Inquiring about the Roloff case, he sought to talk with the lead prosecutor. Reports from inside the courtroom indicate that the meeting went on for more than 2 hours. The district attorney was dubious when Chris initially set the binder on the desk. There is always a lot of speculation, legal ambiguity, and chaos in private investigations. The room's cynicism faded away as Chris guided them through the transaction tracing part, showing them the ATM locations map superimposed on Matt's trip itinerary. The mood turned from courteous disapproval to laser-like concentration. Chris had given the district attorney more than a hint. He had given them the whole case in one fell swoop. Death had come to the cash defense, the notion that the funds could not be located. Chris had completed the administrative tasks that the state lacked the resources to address. His mind had made the connection. According to reports, the prosecutor reviewed the part that described the C. I logged onto Saunders' account and suddenly understood that this was the subpoena that they had been struggling to get. Before this report and the mathematical certainty of the deposit dates matching the farm's missing cash, the DA lacked probable cause to subpoena Caryn's personal investment accounts. A judge would have thrown them out as a fishing expedition. However, with this report, they have more than probable cause. A roadmap was at their disposal. Reportedly, the district attorney glanced at Chris and uttered the words, "This changes everything. The state can now lawfully seek an official subpoena of the E*trade account as this binder has been brought into evidence. Instead of depending on the forensic software's best guess, they should demand that the bank provide all relevant documents, such as official records, signature cards, IP addresses used for login, and withdrawal histories." Thanks to the private inquiry, the entire legal system was able to enter. That day, Chris quietly departed from the courthouse. Returning to his pickup, he sped home to Amy. I couldn't risk her tripping up on television or in an interview, so he didn't tell her the specifics. Instead, he just informed her, "It's done. They know." There was an instant ripple effect across the district attorney's office. The subpoena for the C was signed by a court within 48 hours of Chris presenting the binder. The records of Saunders's brokerage accounts. The request was forwarded to the bank's compliance department. Since it was a criminal subpoena pertaining to possible grand larceny, the bank was bound by law to promptly freeze the account in order to stop the transfer of any assets. Picture the Arizona scene. Based on our best guesses, we can only picture the chaos that would ensue if Caryn attempted to access her E*Trade app to monitor her Discovery Incorporated stocks and instead saw a message that read, "Account locked. Contact administrator. The money is frozen. We can't get it out." That was the moment the trap closed. Picture this, you're calling Matt. Because they believed no one could possibly detect their tiny bit of water in the vast digital ocean, they were able to operate with complete impunity for 3 years. Chris Marek's ability to construct an improved watercraft caught them off guard. A week after that, the subpoena paperwork reached the district attorney's office. They verified all the findings made by Chris's group and more. According to the bank records, Caryn Chandler did in fact open the account under her maiden name and using an old form of identification that she had preserved. According to the records, the locations of the ATMs precisely matched the cash deposits. However, the forensic program failed to detect the withdrawal transfers, which were later disclosed in the official bank records. Although they were amassing a large sum of money in this account, the bank records revealed that they occasionally drew from it to cover incredibly exclusive and specialized indulgences. It was the C, a down payment for a high-end car will be funded from Saunders' account. The Arizona property's high-end landscape architect was paid for through transfers. That put an end to any validity in the slush fund claim. You can't claim that the funds were intended for farm expenses when the bank records clearly show that they were used to pay a Scottsdale pool contractor. With the bank's seal of approval, the evidence connecting the stolen agricultural funds to private wealth could now be presented in a legal proceeding. In the discovery phase of the trial, the prosecution was required by law to reveal any new evidence they had in their possession to Matt's defense team. This development caught them off guard. Reportedly, Matt's attorneys became pale. They had based their entire approach on the uncertainty of money, but they weren't ready to fight against forensic accounting of a hidden brokerage account under a false name. They were ready to claim disorganization and poor bookkeeping. It wasn't just that the cash defense had died, it had turned into a liability. They unwittingly demonstrated their dishonesty to investigators by saying the funds were for farm costs, but were later found in their personal stock portfolio. It had become a crime unto itself to cover it up. Overnight, the whole legal struggle changed in dynamic. All the cards were in Matt's hands before the report. With his wealth, power, and reasonable doubt, he could do anything he wanted. His defensive posture was evident following the report. Felony embezzlement charges were now being discussed by the DA, rather than a plea deal with a slap on the wrist. Remember that none of that money had been reported as income? Therefore, they were bringing up the topic of tax avoidance. It was a personal investment, but it was recorded as farm expenses in the accounts. The Internal Revenue Service, IRS, does not play games, and that constitutes tax fraud. One cannot exaggerate the importance of Chris Marek's contribution in this. Partners in reality TV shows are typically written off as supporting characters. Chris was frequently depicted as an unassuming individual, content with his life, as he wanted to sell houses or ride his motorcycle. Chris, however, became the hero of this story. He relied on facts rather than drama. Instead of using screaming matches, he utilized subpoenas. A high-conflict divorce involving millions of cash goes to the party with the strongest documentation, and he knew this. His experience in real estate, where the loss of a single document may derail a $1 million transaction, gave him a leg up in knowing what to search for. The district attorney's office started getting ready for the preliminary hearing. At this stage, the judge decides whether or not to proceed to a full jury trial based on the evidence presented. Hearings like this are typically tedious and procedural, but with the Marek report, what the district attorney's office had unofficially begun referring to it. In the mix, the defense was bracing for a massacre. As an expert witness, the prosecution intended to summon Chris' team, lead forensic accountant. The blue bar/red bar charts were supposed to be projected onto the courtroom screen. Word got out that Matt's crew was scrambling to cover up the evidence. A judge rejected their requests for a rehearing on the grounds that the private investigation constituted an unlawful invasion of privacy and that the material had been acquired through unlawful means. Locations of ATMs and stock trades are not private information when it comes to money laundering. This data was made public. The judge found both the investigation and the evidence to be within the bounds of legality. I could feel the walls drawing in. Amy felt validated by this. She had been plagued by the feeling of being gaslit for a long time. Someone told her she was insane for suspecting that funds had vanished. Someone informed her that she was confused about business. Just sign the checks and stay quiet, they advised her. Find out more about the C. Her gut feeling was correct the whole time, as Saunders' story demonstrated. Not only was there incompetence, but there was also a conspiracy. No amount of vacation or anniversary dinner could ever compare to the closeness strengthened by her husband, Chris, being the one to reveal it. Her legacy has been safeguarded by him. As we approach the last act of this epic, it is imperative that we examine the direct results of this report. The district attorney now had the power to settle the case out of court or take it to trial, but Chris still hadn't finished yet. The report concluded with a section that outlined not just the disbursement of funds, but also the potential availability of further funds. It is possible that the $200,000 discovered were only the beginning, as the forensic team had previously detected irregularities in previous years. Almost the course of 5 years, they hypothesized, almost $500,000 could have been siphoned off by this technique. Each day revealed more and more depths of the betrayal. With the pretrial hearing quickly approaching, the focus shifted from whether or not Matt and Caryn were guilty. The evidence pointed to their guilt, to who would betray the other first. Loyalty typically fades under these extreme circumstances, when the prospect of federal prison time owing to the structuring accusations becomes all too real. Then Caryn would say she was merely obeying Matt. Suppose Matt tried to say he was unaware of the C, the one at Saunders? The last showdown was about to take place. The judge's bench was occupied by the Marek report. The courtroom was full, and the world was on the verge of discovering the consequences of trying to outwit a man with a knack for tracking money. Coming up next, the public's reaction, the presentation of the report in open court, and the hero's welcome that Chris Marek got. At this point, the bad guys understand they're in the red. But before we reach the end, I have a question for you. Do you believe the authorities should look into the years leading up to Chris' discovery as well? In 3 years, they found $200,000. How much more do you believe is missing? Post your estimations down below. My current reading list is exhaustive. Without exiting the courtroom, the hearing day finally came, and the energy in the room was palpable. A financial crimes tribunal had replaced the previous level of dispute as the focus of the case. Chris Marek, the man responsible for making it all happen, sat in the front row with a notebook in his hand. The courtroom was filled with a somber quiet, as if a natural disaster were about to strike. Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler were seated on one side of the table, with a group of expensive defense attorneys standing on each side. They appeared self-assured and maybe a bit uninterested. Still clinging to the cash defense, they were certain that this hearing would amount to little more than a formality in the absence of any paperwork. Sitting calmly across from him was the district attorney, who had a solitary black folder on his table. Amy Roloff and Chris Marek were seated in the public gallery, right behind the bar. Amy appeared anxious, her fists clenched in her lap. Chris changed appearance. He sat motionless like a guy who knows the movie's ending before it begins. He was patiently waiting, not anxious. The customary legalese was used to commence the proceedings. Citing a dearth of proof connecting its clients' names to the lost farm funds, the defense sought dismissal of the lawsuit. Disorganized bookkeeping is not a crime. They chanted this slogan over and over again, claiming that the prosecution was using hearsay and guesswork as their basis. The judge appeared to be nodding along for a brief moment during the powerful start. Satisfied, the defense counsel took a seat. After then, the district attorney got to his feet. He remained silent and refrained from speaking. He merely took the black binder, which contained the Marek report, and carried it to the room's center. He made a statement to the bench. "Your Honor, the people would like to introduce Exhibit A forensic analysis of financial structuring and corresponding investment properties." There was an immediate change in atmosphere when the DA started reading from the report. Instead of discussing unaccounted funds, he focused on assets that have been geolocated. After he motioned for the court clerk to turn down the lighting, he showed a slide on the screen. It was a graphic that Chris and his team had created, which combined the farm's cash revenue history with the C deposits made at Saunders ATMs. It was a horrible sight. It appeared to be a genetic match. A 2-day interval separated each surge in farm income from a corresponding surge in the hidden fund. A drop of a pin could be heard. Whispering by the defense counsel came to a halt. Squinting at the television, Matt Roloff sprung to his feet from his chair. Defying the overwhelming weight of the data, Caryn maintained her unwavering gaze fixed ahead. After that, the DA went on to the asset allocation chart, which was the following slide. He explained the process of buying the agricultural stocks to the judge. He highlighted the exact purchase dates, which coincided with the cash withdrawal dates to a T. Then he dealt the killing blow. The shares of Discovery Incorporated were disclosed by him. The district attorney allowed the irony to linger for dramatic effect. It was his contention that the accused had used the funds for farm operations, including diesel and fertilizer, that he informed the judge of. The evidence, however, points to the fact that the funds were actually utilized to buy shares in the media firm that shoots the farm. Could you use my assistance in compiling a dramatis personae list of the main characters, or in summarizing the legal accusations made in this story? This is indicative of both theft and a planned investment strategy involving the misuse of stolen funds. At that very second, the cash defense was destroyed, not only rendered ineffective. Nothing could have made this go away. Using funds that were purportedly allocated for manure, you cannot inadvertently acquire shares in the parent firm of your employment. Attorneys for the defense exchanged glances. They were well aware that they had been fooled. They requested a break right away. They had lost all self-assurance and were fleeing for cover. According to accounts, the hallway outside of the courthouse was somewhat rowdy during the recess. Although there was relative silence in the courtroom, the defense team could be seen fighting furiously in a huddle outside. Approaching the gallery railing, the district attorney strode over. In spite of his lack of theatrical flair, he fixed Chris Marek with an intense stare. His professional demeanor was reportedly acknowledged with a modest nod, as reported by eyewitnesses. As part of the hearing's formal record, the district attorney acknowledged the victim's representative's extensive independent investigation, which was instrumental in uncovering these assets. Not that he had to, but he chose not to mention Chris' name. Amy kissed Chris on the cheek. Astonishment and love welled up in her eyes as she gazed at him. He was a successful real estate agent, so she knew he was intelligent, but she never imagined he could pull this off. In his quest to keep her safe, he had become a forensic investigator and a financial crusader. He had spared her sanity in addition to the money. She wasn't insane, he proved it. He validated her point. The aftermath. When the court reconvened, the tone had changed completely. The judge ruled that the evidence in the binder was admissible, and that the subpoena for the full E** trade history would stand. The defense's motion to dismiss was denied. The judge looked over his glasses at the defense table and said, "In light of this new evidence, I suggest counsel prepare for a very difficult trial." Here was the final move. They were essentially coerced into giving in by Marek. The evidence had been made public, which put Matt and Caryn in a tight spot. A jury would examine Saunders' account in great detail if the case went to trial. Everything that was bought, sold, or traded on the stock market would be known to everyone. Not to mention the possibility of jail time for structuring bank deposits. The harm to one's image would be devastating. They had to come to an agreement, repay the money, and hope the district attorney wouldn't push for maximum charges. That was their only choice. On that particular afternoon, the paparazzi were waiting outside the courthouse as Chris and Amy were leaving. Chris usually stands aside. When asked about the show or the kids, he lets Amy take the reins and answer. However, things were different this time around. After taking a step back, Amy continued. At Chris, she made a gesture. Without uttering a word, her body language betrayed her immense pride as she faced the cameras. The man who had defeated Matt Roloff in their match was walking with her. The impact that Marek had on little people. Big World will last a lifetime. He played the role of the fresh face, the rebound, and the amiable camper and motorcyclist for a long time. However, a new aspect of him emerged during the forensic investigation. It revealed a man of exceptional brains, unwavering commitment, and deadly commercial acumen. At the pumpkin farm, there were screaming matches, but he stayed out of it. Angry Facebook posts were not written by him. His only motivation was financial gain. He made use of mathematics, which neither Matt nor Caryn were able to influence. From the beginning, the show's plot has revolved around the farm and its owners, managers, and deserving beneficiaries. It was the data, not the ground, that Chris demonstrated to be the true battlefield. He pulled the curtain back on the slush fund's deceit and the avarice that was concealed by the farm expenses. Nothing the attorneys could do could stop him. He accomplished what the producers were unable to. Truth was revealed to him. The information's afterlife, anyone paying attention will see this investigation's strong message. In this digital age, hiding is impossible. Redeemable for incineration. Dealing in cash is an option. P.O. boxes and maiden names are acceptable. If you invest that much money into the system and want to make it develop, though, someone patient and using the correct tools will eventually find you. Matt and Caryn were under the impression that they were playing chess when in fact Marek was using a supercomputer to play 4D chess. What comes next is the burning question when the smoke clears. There is no denying the evidence. Saunders' account is no longer active. In order to cover expenses like court fees or restitution, the stocks are probably being sold off. The emotional toll, however, has only just started. How may this be remedied for the family? What does Zach do when he finds out that someone is secretly investing his bequest in his stock portfolio? The most crucial question is, what does Amy intend to say now that the gag order has been lifted? Now we reach the most dramatic chapter of this whole story. Amy is allegedly getting ready to do a tell-all interview, according to our sources. Now that Chris has given the DA the smoking gun, the gloves are off. She has remained silent for legal reasons, afraid to jeopardize the probe. Rumor has it that she will spill the beans about the gaslighting that transpired over the years leading up to this revelation, in addition to the money. She will recount the incident where she inquired about the funds and was informed that she was confused. She will take back control of her story. Despite what Matt and Caryn believed, data ended up being more valuable than cash. The truth always leaves a trace, as Marek's meticulous and astute inquiry demonstrated. As the silent watcher who patiently waited for the perfect moment to strike, he is the unrecognized hero of Roloff Farms. So I have to ask you, are you as impressed with Chris as I am? Do you think he should start his own private investigation firm? Or should he stick to real estate? And honestly, do you think Matt and Caryn will serve time, or will they settle out of court to keep the rest of their secrets buried? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. And listen, you do not want to miss our next update. We are tracking the scheduling of Amy's interview, and we have insiders looking into another potential account that the forensic team might have flagged, one that involves offshore holdings. The story isn't over yet. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell, and give Chris a trophy in the comments section. He earned it. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep following the money. More update. Caryn supports Matt as relationship with Zach breaks. Amy Roloff shows off fitness in cute tank top. And Matt Roloff spills it all, says goodbye to NDA. Matt and Amy Roloff lock horns in sneak peek. I will explain everything. Caryn Chandler, a fixture on LPBW, is clearly in Matt's corner as his relationship with Zach deteriorates. As reported by TV Showsays, things heated up on Instagram over the weekend between Zach and Matt. Matt Roloff shared on Instagram that his twin sons, Zach and Jeremy, had the chance to purchase some of Roloff Farms at a favorable price. However, neither twin was interested in collaborating on the purchase. After considering his options, Matt made the difficult decision to sell 16 acres of the land to the highest bidder. In the comments section of his post, Zach Roloff's words were less than complimentary towards his father. Zach called out his father, alleging he was trying to rewrite history before the LPBW season premiere, a claim previously reported by TV Showsays. Zach suspected his dad's motive was to avoid looking bad for selling the family home to someone else. In a scathing post, Zach slammed his father, declaring, "This post is a new shocking low of courteous and manipulation of his family and kids for his own gain." Caryn Chandler faced backlash from fans when the season premiere teaser aired, which featured her smirking while Matt discussed his conflict with Zach. LPBW fans found her smile distasteful. Caryn Chandler resurfaced, seemingly in agreement with Matt's critical post about the house sale from the weekend. She didn't comment on the post, but she did give it a thumbs up, signaling her support for Matt as his relationship with Zach, and possibly Jeremy, seemed to be fraying. As we've mentioned previously, LPBW followers are concerned that Matt Roloff might marry Caryn and bequeath the land to her upon his passing. Fans have long suspected Caryn's motives, believing she was primarily interested in Matt's financial status. Do you think Caryn Chandler is pleased that Matt and Zach's relationship is strained? Share your thoughts in the comments. Amy Roloff shows off fitness in cute tank top. Amy Roloff, of Little People, Big World fame, frequently shares glimpses of her life on social media. During her Michigan holiday, her home state, she kept her followers updated. She'd just gotten back to Oregon. The reality star seems to have no qualms about being outside. This mother of four opted for more revealing summer attire during a recent morning walk. Since her return to Oregon, Amy hasn't shared any photos with her husband, Chris. But now that they're back together, she's been singing his praises. She also used social media while in Michigan to thank her partner for the special memories they'd made. Sadly, his job meant he had to head home before his wife. But the LPBW stars finally got to enjoy their long-awaited vacations. Amy just posted a picture of her dog and her morning walk in Hillsboro, Oregon, on social media. The video also revealed a bit more skin. She explained that it's one way she copes with the heat, which she anticipates will get worse in the coming days. The weather doesn't slow Amy Roloff down, even after a lot of sun. The LPBW actress admitted her face got red. Amy and Daisy May make a great fitness duo, that's clear. Amy, a familiar face to LPBW viewers, recently had a mishap during a Michigan getaway. While at the cottage, the TLC star says she took a tumble from a low wooden wall. This happened while she was trimming bushes, which unfortunately attracted a swarm of bees. Her lips did swell up, but fortunately, the injuries weren't too serious. She seems to be back to normal now. The video of her recent morning walk shows no signs of the bruising around her lips. Amy Roloff has been sharing positive updates on social media. Many are also looking forward to her and Marek's appearance at the Roloff Farms pumpkin season event in October. Matt Roloff spills it all, says goodbye to NDA. Matt Roloff, the face of Little People, Big World *, just spilled the beans after season 25 wrapped up on TLC. So what did he actually say? Viewers were left with more questions than they started with after the season 25 finale of Little People, Big World. The end of season 25 felt like a series finale, even though it wasn't. A big concern for fans is what happens next for the show, especially after Zach and Tori Roloff's final appearances in the novels. Amy Roloff also weighed in, answering some fan questions about the show's future. But honestly, fans of Little People, Big World didn't get much clarity from that either. Amy Roloff confirmed they're not currently filming for TLC, though she didn't completely rule out the possibility of future projects. Given the uncertainty and lingering questions, Matt Roloff took to social media with a detailed update. He tackled some of the most common questions from fans of Little People, Big World. What did Matt Roloff have to say? He also reflected on the show's near cancellation in the past. Filming all those episodes was a tough slog for the entire family. This was around the time when many believed season 6 would be the last hurrah. Little People Big World fans know the show far outlasted that, stretching all the way to season 25. Matt Roloff has suggested this is a big reason TLC has been slow to officially announce the show's conclusion. Historically, when the Roloffs were on the verge of departing, they'd hammer out new deals and specials to keep the show alive. Essentially, this waiting game isn't unfamiliar territory for them, so it's not surprising that things aren't moving quickly at the moment. Matt Roloff recalls the day TLC's PR team issued a press release, declaring season 6 of Little People, Big World would be its last, effectively canceling the show. That didn't happen, and TLC likely wants to avoid any premature announcements to sidestep a repeat of that particular misstep. As Matt Roloff sees it, relationships are the heart of Little People, Big World. He also touched on the family tensions surrounding Roloff Farms. Matt asserted that, regardless of any negative feelings toward that storyline, the drama actually boosts the ratings. As for the future of the Little People Big World franchise, Matt said, "At this time, nobody really knows. I feel very content and satisfied with the run of the shows and the journey we shared with you all. I thought TLC handled the last Tuesday season finale well, wrapping things up neatly and giving a clear picture of where the remaining family members stood." Matt offered some perspective on why the season 25 final felt like a series end. "I think it's fair to say they wrapped up the Roloff LPV," Matt Roloff added. Many assumed the Crazy Train saga was the end, given its brilliance. However, much like Amy Roloff, Matt Roloff shared a wealth of information about the inner workings of Little People Big World, and the show's future is now in limbo as TLC weighs its options. TLC, as Matt Roloff noted, and as many fans suspect, addressed most of their concerns by tying up numerous loose ends should the season 25 final ultimately prove to be the series final. Matt and Amy Roloff lock horns in sneak peek. The previews for Little People, Big World hint at some tense moments between Amy and Matt Roloff. Despite moving on with their lives, the former spouses maintain a cordial relationship and remain part of each other's worlds, though it's clear they still rub each other the wrong way. Season 25 of TLC's Little People, Big World is currently airing. It's a great opportunity for fans to catch up on everything happening at Roloff Farms and elsewhere. This season carries a certain bittersweet quality, especially since Tori and Zach Roloff won't be appearing in any more episodes. Viewers of Little People, Big World might also get a glimpse of what Matt Roloff has done with the section of Roloff Farms he initially put on the market. Matt Roloff chose to transform that section of the farm, which included the old Roloff family home, into a short-term rental. He did this after declining to sell it to his sons or to anyone else. So far, Matt's business move seems to be a smart one, and it's clearly working. What started as a joint venture for a good cause has turned into a significant problem for Amy. And then there's Matt Roloff in the teasers for the next episode of Little People, Big World. These kinds of things help clarify why they weren't a good match and why they eventually divorced and moved on with their lives. Amy and Matt Roloff are at it again, collaborating on a charity event. Though they have a shared purpose, their interactions quickly become strained. The logistics are already a headache, as Matt needs to schedule the event for a day when the farmhouse isn't overrun with guests. In scenes from Little People, Big World, Matt doesn't mince words when it comes to Amy. Amy, she can cross that line from micromanager to dictator quicker than me, he states flatly. Even with the best of intentions, these two seem to bring out the worst in each other, and viewers can expect to see more of that. Amy believes you can't have too many leaders and too many bosses. She's not shy about speaking her mind and taking the lead. This is a problem, though, because Matt Roloff shares that same sentiment. As they try to one-up each other, a lot of drama is sure to unfold. No more today. What are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.